for her, the issue was, aging parents, resentment of not being in control of your own time, and that this time in our life is not going to live up to our romanticized ideal of this is going to be all about me and I'm going to get to sail off into the sunset. But all of these realities of life kind of dragging us down. And so when I was reading this question, I could just sense some resentment in there. And I think just right off the bat, gosh, I mean, who wouldn't feel that in that situation? I think it's important to acknowledge our feelings. We've talked about that before. You acknowledge them, you sit in them for a minute, and then you decide what the best course of action is so that you don't stay in that marinating place of a harmful emotion like anger or resentment.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Life After Kids with Doctors Brooke and Lynn. I'm Dr. Brooke.
And I'm Dr. Lynn. I'm a caffeinated Dr. Lynn.
Oh, no. First it was raw Dr. Lynn, and now it's caffeinated Dr. Lynn. Somebody help. SOS.
You won't know that Dr. Brooke needs help, but there will be signs.
There will definitely be signs. And my husband's traveling this week, so I'm literally all alone with Dr. Lynn.
Oh my gosh, that was an evil cat.
I know. If you count the teenage son who literally doesn't come out of his bedroom after he gets home from school, so right. I really am alone.
Yeah. No, seriously, I don't usually drink caffeine, and it's just been, I'm doing a reset, a cleanse, which is a good thing to do in January. That's not the topic that we're talking about at all today, but it is a good time. There's so many people that do sober January, Whole Foods January. It just makes a lot of sense to focus on your health and make it the, main priority in January because you're coming off the Christmas holiday. In any case, I don't usually drink caffeine, but I get why people do. It's so good. For me, it just interrupts my sleep. So I've given it up.
Yes.
Over the years.
And you crash and burn sometimes.
And then you crash and burn. So in about 2 episodes, I'll be like trying to prop my eyelids open. Hopefully you guys won't see that. But no, I mean, caffeine's great.
The fact that you were here and drank 2 cups of coffee last night right before you went to bed. And also, P.S., I'm like, what the heck kind of a detox are you doing right now anyway? Like, who's drinking 2 cups of coffee before bed?
Yeah, I don't follow my lead on that. It's not necessarily fully health-centric. It is being administered by a physical trainer, a bodybuilder. So there are some interesting parts of it that are more geared, I guess, towards setting up your body's metabolic rate and, getting it on a rhythm than it is perfectly what I'm used to doing, which is like addressing your cellular needs on making your cells sufficient and giving your body everything it needs. So I think we maybe went way too much into me and what I'm doing there, but
that's okay.
Yeah.
Caffeine. Well, this is not, as you said at the start, that was not the topic, but it's okay because
let's bring it around.
Also, this is real life and this is what we're doing right now. And it is, I think, to your point, doing some sort of a cleanse or something this time of year because we come off the holidays and we're all like, we've eaten all the things and done all the things. And so a lot of us need it. Tell them what the actual topic is.
All right. So somebody wrote in, and this was really great, the way that they titled this. And if you download and subscribe, you saw the title. And she gave it to us. We didn't even have to come up with it. It was so perfectly worded. It's the topic of managing emotions, of losing the greatest job that you've ever had, which is being mom to your kiddos. And also being forced into other roles and possibly having little time for yourself, for self-care or for reinvention because of things like health issues. Maybe sick parents are a problem or an issue for you for time, or added work demands.
Right. I mean, we say so often this is a perfect storm. And normally we're saying it's a perfect storm because we've got the kids leaving the house and the hormones are going crazy. A lot of us are entering like perimenopause, menopause. But then on top of that, there's all these other real issues that taking care of elderly loved ones where, you're ready, the kids are out, you're ready to start to maybe you feel the sense of loss and you're trying to manage those emotions, but you're being proactive and you're ready to take the next step. But then you get set back a notch because something out of your control comes up, like your own health issues, taking care of an elderly loved one. I mean, whatever, a financial situation, there's so many things. So I do like this topic. I feel like we've done a lot of deep topics. I'm ready for, I mean, this is important to address, but also I need a laugh.
You can laugh at me over here, like
Yeah.
bouncing off the walls.
But let's face it, like this can be a very hard season. There's a lot of different things happening, a lot of different emotions. So how do we tell us what to do, Dr. Lynn?
Oh,
Oh,
wise one. I don't have perfect answers, but I think it's just recognizing when I read this question, I could just read between the lines of the resentment that she was carrying because clearly she's being forced to take care of, I think for her the issue was, aging parents.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
and that resentment of not being in control of your own time, and that this time in our life is not going to live up to our romanticized ideal of this is going to be all about me and I'm going to get to sail off into the sunset, but all of these realities of life kind of dragging us down. And so when I was reading this question, I could just sense some resentment in there. And I think just right off the bat, gosh, I mean, who wouldn't feel that in that situation? I think it's important to acknowledge our feelings. We've talked about that before. You acknowledge them, you sit in them for a minute, and then you decide what the best course of action is so that you don't stay in that marinating place of a harmful emotion like anger or resentment.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, I mean, you said being forced to take care of them, and I get where you're going there, but that's also a strong word. Like, we're not necessarily forced to take care of elderly loved ones, but I mean, a lot of us are glad to do it, but it's also maybe not what you would have chosen in a perfect world, right?
Yeah,
So
that
it's a
word.
tricky
Okay.
thing.
So if I could go back, maybe I wouldn't have said force, but being in a position.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Where there's no other answer because for whatever, there can be a multitude of reasons. And we've
Circumstances.
talked about this we did address specifically taking care of an elderly loved one in a previous podcast episode. And I'll make sure I link it because
And I will say it struck a major nerve
yes.
in our community.
Well, yeah, because we're like the
topic.
sandwich generation right now, right? Like between like taking care of the kids and taking care of
Is that new?
elderly.
Like, isn't every generation end up in that place, or are you saying because of like aging?
It's just our age. It's just where we are in our stage of life. It's
okay.
not our generation
so we're
specifically. It's just
we're in the sandwich decades.
Decades, whatever, years, sandwich years. Yeah, maybe I shouldn't have said generations. At least that's how I understand it. I think we understand it the same way. I just shouldn't have said generations.
No,
maybe.
that's okay. Yeah.
But yeah, so it's a bit of a pickle. And it is hard. Like it is there is that is jam packed with like, I agree. There probably is some resentment. And I think it's important to say, like, if you're feeling resentful, if you're in this situation, like it's okay to feel that way and you're not alone. It's very normal to feel that way. So give yourself some grace. Like what we talked about, guilt, like don't feel guilty over that.
Yeah. I mean, you're going to feel how you're going to feel.
Right.
You can't really tell yourself how to feel about something when you feel a different way.
Right. And that's that tricky thing of I've been kind of unpacking a little bit more emotions and emotional things because like we're not our thoughts, we're also not our emotions. So emotions are just something that are there for us to pay attention to and maybe see it, what's behind it, sit with it a little bit, but it doesn't necessarily like it doesn't define you. So in other words, like if you're feeling resentful, well, take a moment, sit with it. Why are you feeling resentful? Unpack that a little bit, but also don't hold guilt because it doesn't mean that you're like, oh, I'm such a terrible person because I'm feeling resentful about taking care of somebody I love.
I like that you said that because emotions are signs,
right,
that we can pay attention to, but they're not a roadmap because they're so fleeting, right? So it's dangerous when we follow the path of our emotions. We are going to go, if you looked at the dots that were left over at the end of that exercise, you would be all over the map.
Right. And it's important in this case because this is a loaded question and it's all about really emotions, navigating emotions. And that's a really important thing to understand. And I think I'm just after all these years realizing that you're not your emotions. You are the action you take. Either in spite of
all of it. Yeah.
You are, but it doesn't define your emotions. Don't have to define you. What defines you is what you do with them, how you react to them, what you do with them, and how you act on them.
Right.
So you might feel a bit of resentment, but that doesn't mean, like, for someone like me who's constantly worried about being a good person and being good enough, if you're feeling resentful, like, it's an emotion that doesn't make you a good or a bad person. It's just how you're feeling. But that's, it's not, doesn't mean you're taking
Your
it to the level of being
character,
mean to the person you're taking care of.
right, right.
You're still going to show up for them. You're just feeling
Your
something
character is shaped in feeling an emotion, but choosing to do the right thing
in spite
anyway.
of it.
Yep, in
Right.
spite of it.
And using it as a tool
And it's
to understand, like, to self-reflect and to, why am I feeling this way? And is there something I can do about it so that I don't feel this way? Or is it just something that's going to pass? Like, there's a lot in there.
yeah, there is. Let's go back to the lighter
Yep.
side of this, which is just, I loved how she worded this: managing the emotions of losing the greatest job that you ever had. I think a lot of women feel that way. I will be interested to see how I feel when my last child actually leaves the nest, because I think some of it you can't quite feel until it's sort of like the curtain drops on that whole phase.
Yes.
But for many of you, and we've, pointed out that some of you guys we love the Enneagram. It's a good tool to come to know yourself, and knowing yourself is a great place to start for reinvention and for getting the most out of your life,
Yep.
right? It's what we always say is step one. So the Enneagram is a great tool for getting to know yourself. And for many of you, being that type 2 Enneagram, the helper, we just were built for it. These moms, they're like, man, like, she is like the best mom ever, right? It just comes so naturally to her. That was me. But I can have so much admiration, and we've always spoken into you, if this is you listening, that you will have a harder time than most when that job is over.
Yeah, oftentimes, for sure. For sure. Yeah, it's a tricky place to be. And also, I would say, let me add to the best job that you ever had, but also the hardest job that you ever had.
Right. Are we
Because,
forgetting all the downsides of it?
I
Are
mean,
we
there's something,
just glamorizing it? And
and I think this is a good time to address this. And this just came up for me, and we discussed this a little bit as I was writing the book. But I think it's a little bit of, and I think we have to be clear on this, because when we hit this phase of life, we want to just assume that everything we're feeling, the emotions, are from losing the role of being parents. And by the way, one thing that we have to keep in focus is that we're always going to be a mom. They might not be under our immediate control and under our roof, but there's always going to be opportunities to parent and mother and nurture them, right? So we don't want to lose sight of that. Um, but I think it's also a case of, we spent so many years, and I bring this up because I said the hardest job we ever had. We spent so many years in survival mode, because we have to show up for our kids first and our family, and our needs go to the wayside and our self-care go to the wayside. And what we do is just step up and do what we have to do. We run on adrenaline, we run on coffee, we run on all the things. And then when your life starts to settle down a little bit and the kids start to grow up and become more independent and then go to college or move on, whatever, move out of the house, you have that space and your body knows, like, it's safe to let its guard down, and we fall apart a little bit. It's very similar to if you've ever had the experience of you run, go, and you feel good, and then as soon as you get on vacation, you get sick. It's the same concept. And it actually is, like, research that there's something physiological that goes on in your body, that you may be exposed to things. Your body's in such survivor mode, it just does what it has to do to protect. But when it does know that it's safe to let its guard down a little bit, all of a sudden you start to fall apart. So I think the reason I say that is some of what we're managing is just not feeling sad that they've moved on, but we're also dealing with the emotions of, like, the letdown and
response.
feeling
Yep.
safe to experience the emotions, or the just, like, that was a lot. Like, it's been a lot for a lot of years, and processing it, and, like, now what?
Right.
So that's a big
Stepping into a void. And nature abhors a vacuum. People hate stepping into empty spaces. So you hold on, we hold on, we hold on.
yeah.
Because even though if we take a leap, it takes, right, some risk to take that leap and
Yeah.
go into the unknown. So we, even if we don't like where we are, we hold on to it because it's familiar.
Right. So one thing in the midst of that that I would encourage you, if you have children that already have their own kids, encourage them. And I have friends that are younger and in an earlier phase of life with younger kids that I'm encouraging them, like,
Yeah,
take the time to
that's
pour into
great
yourself.
advice. But, would you have ever taken that?
Um,
Like, you know what I mean?
I can tell you that the
It's kind
my
of like
friend.
with your kids, and you can see that they're stepping into, can I sit back here?
Mhm.
Um, they're going to make a mistake, but it's just one of those life lessons. They have to feel the pain of whatever it is that they are about to do themselves so that they can learn not to do it again.
I hear you, and I would typically say, yeah, probably. But all I can tell you is my personal experience and having this conversation with a friend that was like, thank you so much for saying that.
Oh,
I needed to hear that so badly, and I'm burning the candle at both ends. She runs her own business and she's got the kids, and she's like, I literally do not. I feel bad about making time for myself. And I definitely need to take a step back and look at places in my life where I can say no and make sure I'm showing up good for my kids, but also for
mm.
myself. You can't control how something you say is received, but you won't know how it's going to be received unless you say it
So I'm just
sometimes.
thinking, maybe it's because I'm so stubborn, but I just remember when my kids were little and my mom and a lot of more mature mothers would come to me, make sure you rest when the baby rests,
Oh,
and, all the things. And you're just, maybe it's because it's so new, all of the practical advice about self care, but it just never landed with me. I just couldn't get there until I made the mistake, stayed up
yeah.
scrolling on whatever just because I needed time for myself. I needed to feel like I had like some just time to breathe,
Yeah.
and I didn't want to spend that sleeping. But I can see how that was great advice. So,
Agreed.
sometimes but I guess at the end of the day, you should still share, especially if you're being asked, if someone's giving you an open door to give them
Sure.
advice, and you can see sort of like, I want to help you because I can see you kind of going off the rails.
Right. And to your point, I remember like, oh, me being exhausted and the, enjoy it. It goes by so fast. And I'd be like,
Yeah, exactly.
if you're
Where you're
not
kind of like,
watching and you
oh,
just heard that,
thanks, lady. I've never heard that before.
yeah, that was a big
No
thumbs
one's ever
down with
said
the
that
fart
to me
sound.
before. I find myself saying that now and then right afterwards. I cringe
I know.
because, so I try not to, because it's just, it, it's not cliche. It's so freaking true. It is so true. Enjoy it now, but that's a personal journey. Like, you got to come to that conclusion. Like, if you can't see that it goes by fast for your own,
Mhm.
then you're never going to see it, no matter how many times I tell you. So it's sort of like one of those things that just kind of goes without saying.
Mhm. And I think we can actually segue this back to the first topic of discussion, which was how do you manage not only manage your emotions of like losing the best job you ever had, but if you also now sidetracked, you want to do something for yourself and you're taking care of an elderly loved one. Because what I would want to tell you from my own experience, and we were primary caretakers for Ken's grandmother after his mother passed. And what I would want to say to you is just keep in mind, and it's a very similar thing to telling a young mom, like, enjoy it because it goes by too quick. And when it's done, it's done. And it's just a weird thing I'm going to say, but if you're taking care of an elderly loved one and you're feeling a little resentful or like, wondering when it's going to be your turn, I would also say to you, try to enjoy it because it is going to go by. And when it's done, it's done. And that's maybe like hard for some people to hear. And I hope it doesn't sound callous because I say that with love because I walked it. Um,
Mm.
and when you're in it, you can't see that because you're just like, for us, we still had all the kids at home. So I was trying to manage everything and my business and the kids and make sure her needs were met. And it was very, very difficult. There were times that I was like, I can't, you walked through me with that season, but it is very true that you have to keep the perspective, if you can, that this is just a period of time. This is not your whole entire life. And when it's over, that's going to be it.
There's going to be aspects of it that you maybe not only miss, but that you don't want to end up with regrets for or guilt
Yeah.
around it. Yeah.
And just taking the time to, in the midst of the hard, be grateful for the time that you get to spend with them when you
Mm.
are there with them, spending time with them or doing for them.
Yeah.
It's important. It's an important piece. And it doesn't change the fact, again, it's okay to feel like bad about like, when's it going to be my turn? Like I was ready to start doing this thing, or
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to manage my own emotions with my kids, but now I've got this. It's okay that it's a hard situation, but also like, let's try to see some positives in it and stay grateful where we
Yeah.
are.
I mean, that's a resounding theme of what we do for ourselves and what we remind you guys to do, which is to look at the situation and reframe it a little bit. Like, yeah, you if you look at it, what's wrong is always available, but so is what's right. So it's a crummy situation, quite possibly. Your circumstances could really suck, for lack of better words,
Yeah.
but there's something in there that's good. Like
Yeah.
for you guys, you had a wonderful, character in your life with Queen Edith,
Yes.
and you have fond memories with her and with
Mhm.
her being so present in the boys' life. And so there's always one or two nuggets or kernels of good.
Yes.
And reframing is one of the most powerful tools that we have to, instead of focusing on the negative, to look at something that's even the tiniest bit positive.
Yep.
And there's a silver lining in any situation, no matter how horrendous.
Yes. And I want to go back to and talk about what we can do to navigate the emotions of the kids going, like practical things for them. But before we do that, while we're on this topic of taking care of an elderly person, right? Like, what can we do in the midst of that? And I think the biggest thing that comes to mind for me, if you're sitting there going, like, oh, the kids are out of the house and now I was ready to focus on something new and like start on my own physical health or start some new purpose, find the next thing, but now I'm taking care of somebody else. My first thing that I would challenge you on is to look through your schedule and what you do day to day and find the things that you can say no to. Because I guarantee you that there probably are some things that you feel like you have to be doing that are a time suck that you don't have to be doing.
We need a stop doing list
Mm.
more than we need a start doing or to do list. And at our age, honestly, it's as important. There's things that you are doing that are not serving you, and you're just doing them.
Right. And there going to be things. So okay, so here's the thing. The non-negotiables. One of the non-negotiables might be that you have to go to work because you have to pay your bills. That's something then that's you have to have an income in some way. So that could be a non-negotiable at this point in time, depending on where you are. Maybe not, but maybe it is. We have to keep that in mind. The other non-negotiable is you're going to take care of or at least manage the people that take care of your loved one. But then the other non negotiable needs to be, and some of you need to hear this, it needs to be you taking care of yourself.
Mm.
So anything else that you're doing, you need to look at and evaluate and see if there are things you can let go in order to make time to take care of yourself if you're not already doing that.
Yes, that's really deep, and I think it is important to point out because we don't look at it, as many of us don't look at it as a non-negotiable. But the more that you value yourself, and not only that, the more that you value the work and what you're doing for the people that you care about. So if you love your parents, they're only going to be better off if you stop, take care of yourself for, even if it's a few minutes a day.
Yeah.
That is going to, what do we say? Energy is everything. So if you take just a few moments to refuel yourself, you're going to be a far better
Right.
daughter, far better wife, far better mom.
All of it. And, by the way, we talk about when the kids were little, and I mentioned earlier that we get to this place where we're burnt out because we were in survival mode when the kids were at home. And then, we could manage without the time for taking care of ourselves, because frankly, we were younger. Most of us could get there, but the older we get, the more taking care of yourself becomes a non-negotiable, especially if you're still needing to take care of somebody else, because you're eventually going to burn out. And if you really are focused on living not only like a fulfilling life, a meaningful life, but a vibrant, healthy, and energetic life, taking care of yourself has to be a non-negotiable. It just has to be. And if you're in a season where you're really spread thin because now you're taking care of somebody else, or some other issue has come up for you that's maybe taken you off track from fully pursuing your next purpose or more purpose, I'm here to tell you that you'll get your opportunity down the road. That purpose for you is going to be there. But if you're not healthy enough to do it, it doesn't matter. So your focus really needs to be on what can you do to take good care of yourself and be as healthy emotionally and physically in this season as possible.
That's great. That's great. And many of you in that situation, it's a survival mode situation. So you are thinking to yourself, well, that's great advice, but I just don't have that time. And you know what? It could very well be the case. I would say in that instance, if that's you and you really are just like, I have to do what I have to do. I think at least stop for 2 seconds and make a list of some of your outlets that are healthier outlets than, say, just scrolling or binge watching or binge eating, or, because those are unfortunately those are keeping you on that hamster wheel, versus if you have one habit that it's loving and, I guess, just really gentle self-care for yourself. Some things like journaling come to mind, reading, you might indulging in a good book is great, but you just don't have like hours of time. There's 10 minutes. Don't wait to do things like that for yourself because you don't have hours at a time. Schedule 10 minutes, and a little bit is better than nothing.
Yeah. And by the way, if you're struggling because you were excited about finding a new purpose or more purpose with your kids being older, and now you've gotten a little sidetracked or off course because you're taking care of somebody, you might need to reframe that and look at it as, instead of like, oh, I can't pursue my purpose, you might need to look at it that right now in this season of life and for this period of time, this is my purpose. This is my new purpose. And this is what I'm going to do. And I'm going to do it to the best of my ability. And if you can maybe get to that place and stop thinking, yeah, but I want to be doing all these other things, you're likely to feel, because the recipe for unhappiness is when what you want from your life doesn't look like what your life actually is. So
all unhappiness comes from
yes,
expectations that are not met.
Right. So there might
our goals and expectations that are not met.
Yeah. So there might be a little bit of letting go for you too, at least in this season, and keeping in mind that it's a temporary season. There will always be, you can always go back to something else at some point in time.
Yeah. Repeating what you said earlier, we did a whole episode on caring for aging parents.
Yeah.
And in that, we talked about some resources.
Mm-hmm.
And that, my other piece of advice is get as creative as possible. Make it your purpose to fight for even a little bit of free time by exhausting all of the resources that you can turn up that are at your disposal to help. I mean, it doesn't have to be something that you just throw money at. There could be government programs, there could be state programs, there could be, people in your family who are willing to step in and help and give you a break.
Church
that you haven't examined. Church.
Mm-hmm. Churches offer
great
services.
Example.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true. You don't have to feel like you have to do it all. There can be things that you can do. All right, before we wrap up, let's just circle back to, because the overarching theme was, how do you manage the emotions of letting go? So what are you, you're not quite there, so you're being proactive.
Focusing on losing the job,
Yes.
that. And there, I don't know that we ever manage our emotions as much as we feel them and we decide to act in a certain way that's befitting of how we want to represent and how we want to be an example.
Mm-hmm. That's beautiful right there because you're right. And we talked about emotions earlier. We can't always manage our emotions, well, control our emotions, just like we can't control our thoughts sometimes. So, how are you going to allow those emotions to be, but get on the other side of it and take action in a healthy way to get yourself past it?
Yep. And I think you know yourself. If you're a emotional person,
Mm-hmm.
then the stronger the emotion, the stronger the outlet needs to be to help you to deal with that. So, you know, if you've got a lot going on inside your internal world, you need a really strong, powerful outlet, whether that's just screaming into a pillow, right? Which works. Or working out is such a beautiful one, right? So
Mm-hmm.
if you're not utilizing that, gosh, that's our best advice. Some of my best advice.
Journaling is another good one. If
Journaling.
it's not movement, but like you have to process it some way. You might process it physically, you might speak it to somebody, you might just let it out by screaming or whatever, but you might process it by writing. We're all different in how we can process our emotions, but those are all good outlets, right?
Yes, and when you focus it through the appropriate channel,
Mm-hmm.
then it doesn't misfire and land all over in the wrong. Like it doesn't come out on your kids or your spouse or,
Yes.
I think that's because that's just only going to hurt you in the
Right.
end. You
Yeah.
know, it hurts them and it hurts the relationship that you have with them. And that's not what you intended, right? When you started, you're feeling a lot and you
Mm-hmm.
just need a better outlet.
It is big emotions, and I think too, just knowing that it's normal what you're feeling because we're all feeling it. We all go through that. Like it is a big deal. It's okay to feel that way, but to also know, like, I don't, I mean, I'm not that far out and I still have AJ, right? But from my sense of just two of them being out of the house now, and as time is moving forward, and other moms that I talk to, it's not going to be that way forever. Like, like you might just keep in mind that you might be feeling really crummy and it might be a new thing for you, but change is hard and transition is hard and it takes some getting used to. When you put the right tools and steps, some of the things we just talked about, you're managing stress, you taking care of yourself physically, you'll get there.
You'll get there. That's
Yeah.
exactly right. I love
Yeah.
that. I love that as a way to conclude.
Ladies, thank you so much for joining us. It's always a pleasure to have you with us. Make sure that you're following us on all of our social media feeds so you stay up to date with everything that's happening in the Life After Kids world. We are on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. Go to the website www.lifeafterkids.com for all of our free resources and the blog. And if you prefer to watch us over listen, we are also on YouTube.
We are. We are. And that is becoming the most, it's increasing in popularity with people in our age.
Ooh, fun.
Yeah.
Fun fact, Lynn.
The fastest platform.
Thank you for sharing that before we wrap up. Ladies, have a great day and an even better week. And we're going to go pump Dr. Lynn with some more caffeine.
Please. I'm ready.